Hey everyone, Howie here with Fisher's Flies. Thanks for checking in. Today I'm tying up an October Caddis Stimulator. This is of course just a variation of the famous Kaufman Stimulator, just in October Caddis colors. For the hook today I'm using a Fulling Mill 5155 tactical big bug hook in size 8. And for the thread I'm using their new Fulling Mill Pro thread in flat 210 denier fluorescent fire orange. I'm going to get started with my thread pretty much right behind the hook eye. I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap to just allow a little extra space when finishing this fly, about a hook eye's length. But I'm going to bring my thread back into the bend here with my stimulators, or with stimulators in general. I like to bring my thread back to where I want the tail to start. I like doing this as a reference point, really, so you can see I brought my thread all the way back. Where that thread has stopped is where I'm going to put that tail. For the tail, I'm using Select Cow Elk in orange. This is from Nature's Spirit. This is a nice color orange, in my opinion. It's, I think, kind of the right color for an October Caddis. It's not super bright, but it's also not super dark either. I'm going to grab a small clump from the hide, cut it off, clean it up, and then stack it, of course. And once I get it stacked with those tips aligned, I'm going to grab this clump, switch hands, and set it where I want it. On most stimulators, I like my tail to come a little bit past the hook bend, to actually show past the hook and be kind of that tail extension of the body, however you want to look at it. But I'm going to bring thread wraps back to that tie-in point just before it, and I'll tell you why I'm doing this in just a second. But and then I'm just bringing that thread back up, and when you go backwards, you do lighter wraps. You still want it secure, but do lighter wraps, then bring tighter wraps back further. For the wire, I'm using Brassie and copper, and I'm going to secure this on the far side of the hook. And the reason why I like to take looser wraps going backwards is it really prevents the tail fibers from flaring too much. So especially the last couple wraps, if you can get it to where you have the right amount of pressure, firm but not too tight, it'll keep your tail straight. For the body on this fly, I'm using their Fulling Mill's new Pro Floss in 340 denier, again fluorescent fire orange. And I'm going to take one large strand, but I've doubled it over to make two. This is just going to help wrapping it a little bit easier. And I'm going to take this about 1 or 2 wraps past where I actually ended my thread for the wire. And the reason why I like doing this is because I like to wrap my body material, whether it's dubbing or floss, back over the tail, usually just a wrap, sometimes 2 depending. And that's to kind of collect that tail if there's any fibers that, again, are really just kicking out too much. But I'm just taking pretty much touching, kind of slightly overlapping wraps on this body. If you'd like a bigger body or a more smooth body, you can do 3 or 4 wraps, and that just kind of helps fill in the space a little bit. I don't think it matters all that much, but again, if you're looking for that like super smooth body, again, go up to 3 or 4 strands of floss, and that should help even that out. You can see in this body there's a little bit of segmentation, gaps, whatever you want to call it, but I don't necessarily mind that. For the hackle, I'm using Whiting Farms Furnace Saddle Hackle. I really like this saddle hackle because, again, especially for this color, but just in general, it's kind of orangish, kind of brownish. It's got the darker stem on the inside. So in my opinion, when you wrap it, whether you wrap it in super tight loops or a little bit looser, it kind of gives a variegated color. You get the darker color closer to the body, and then the lighter color the further out it goes. Again, maybe it doesn't matter, but I feel like it helps, especially on a fly like this. You can see that black around the stem really gives it kind of actually a pronounced segmentation, which again, most natural flies have some sort of segmentation like that. Once I get to the end though, I'm going to start counter wrapping my wire. And again, this is just a standard Kaufman stimulator at this point. There's nothing really crazy about it except for the colors. So The nice thing about wrapping the hackle backwards and the wire forwards is you don't actually have to counter wrap it. They naturally counter wrap themselves. So instead of trying to wrap your wire the opposite direction of your thread, how it's going to secure it in the front, if you wrap your hackle backwards, it naturally counter wraps your hackle when you wrap your wire forward and allows you to secure your wire with your thread in a more natural way and less likelihood of that wire actually slipping out. So for the wing here, you can add some flash for underwing if you'd like. I'm not doing that here on this specific pattern. Again, personal preference. Sometimes I add them on my just traditional stimulators. I'm just not doing it here on this one. But I'm going to grab a little bit larger of a clump for the wing on this rather than the tail. It's going to be about twice the size of the tail probably, maybe a little less. Depending on the size that you're tying, maybe you want a little bit more. But I'm going to tie this. I like my wing on these stimulators to overlap the tail. So I personally like them to be about the tips of my wing to be at the midpoint of the tail. And you can kind of see that one when I laid it down, but also just right now. So I'm going to wrap some tight wraps really at first, and that's going to push the thread or the wing kind of up and out, but we'll come back and clean that up a little bit later if you want to, which I will do. And then I'm just going to take a bunch of wraps through these butts, kind of start to try and build this head, this tapered head. And you can see now I'm starting to kind of collect that top wing and take some looser wraps back over the wing. And then I'm also going to do this again when securing the floss. You can see I'm taking some looser wraps, not super tight, but just to collect that wing to get it to lie kind of more where I want it to. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the floss that I did with the tail once that time comes. I'm going to take a wrap actually backwards, and again, that's going to collect and kind of gather that wing. But lastly, I'm going to add this hackle in. Again, I'm using Furnace saddle hackle from Whiting. I'm going to use just a slightly larger size than the hackle size on the body. I don't necessarily think this is 100% necessary, but it is made to make the fly sit a certain way. But again, I'm going to take that floss and I'm going to wrap it once or twice backwards slightly over the wing to get it to sit where I want it. And then I'm just going to take overlapping or touching wraps forward to right behind the hook eye. And then, of course, I'm going to secure this with 2 wraps over top and 1 in front. Snip it free. And then I'm going to start to wrap my hackle forward. And I'm doing open spiral wraps here. Of course, you can do touching wraps, whatever you prefer. And of course, mistakes happen. So I just hit my bobbin on accident and I just shot it off the front of the hook, which is why on these down eye hooks, I like to turn my hook upwards just to prevent that from happening. But I'm going to see if I can get this to wrap again, even though I already cut this off. So again, I'm going to wrap this forward. And it looks like I'll be good. It just won't be as thick, which is fine. But again, I'm going to secure that with 2 wraps on top and 1 in front and snip that excess. And again, I'm just going to wrap this forward with open spiral wraps. Personally, I like that head color to shine through. And again, of course, I'm trying not to hit my bobbin this time. And I'm taking about 4.5, 5 wraps, whatever you want to call it, before securing that. Similarly, 2 over top of the hackle and then 1 in front to kind of build some tension on that fly. I'm going to use a half hitch tool to finish this fly. I like to do that. It just helps to finish the head of this fly a little bit easier, especially with those hackle fibers pointing out. I'm going to do one more over top of that. I always like to do this on a hackle style fly, hackle head style dry fly, again, just to make sure it's not going anywhere. Then I'm going to straighten my hook again, and then I'm going to hit the head of this with some Solarez, just a little bit to make sure that the thread wraps don't come undone and this fly lasts a little bit longer. But here you have it. Again, this is an October Caddis Kaufman Stimulator. So tie them up, fish them, let me know what you think. Thanks for checking in.